Hi everyone, Ken Hsieh here. Here I'm the music director at the Vancouver Metropolitan Orchestra Society. I also conduct in Japan and China and also in the US. Of course, with COVID-19 right now, we're in a little bit of an unprecedented time, but I'm looking forward to chatting up with all of you guys. Music is so universal. Not only is music universal, it's essentially a language spoken by everybody. And so one of the things is that music becomes a common ground for everyone to relate to. Back then, when Berlin in Germany was divided by a wall until 1989. The wall was taken down and there was a concert done by the great Leonard Bernstein. He did the Beethoven Symphony No. 9. And so essentially it's all about brotherhood. It's about everybody coming together. Music is actually something in the purest form. It reaches into people's heart, into the soul of each mind, and that, everybody is able to understand it. So one of the things I think people have to realize is that everybody was born with no bad intention. Everyone comes into this world with purity, And music in this form is all about purity. And that's why when you play music, it puts people to tear, it puts people into different emotional states. And that's why I think music is extremely powerful and is shared among people all over the world. The conductor is not making any sound because nothing concrete, but for example, the music is concrete. What's challenging about a conductor's role is you're working essentially with 15, 20, or 50 or 100 different souls. Everybody's soul is very different on how they perceive things. How do you make all these souls come together in unity? It's always about finding a mutual respect and mutual understanding of each other. How much we're willing to bend to make music, that's a different thing. That's why there is so many disagreements in music. And the beauty about music is that music is not just black and white. It's such a gray area. Everybody has their own preference. The first concert I remember was conducting the VSO at the Deer Lake Park, and there were 15,000 people. And you have to make them feel relaxed. You have to relate with them. I gotta be honest, like when I first started, I stuttered so much. But as time grew, I became more adaptable. I think I adapted to the environment. So I think right now for me, the music happens in the rehearsal, but just before the concert, I'm very nervous about what I'm going to talk and how to react to the audiences, But one of the things I loved about talking with the audiences is that I begin to realize that the audience is there with you. They are not against you. First comes up to mind is Lang Lang, there's Sarah Chang, all these great classical musicians that I have encountered. But in terms of popular artists, the one that I would never forget is Kosuke Atari. Now, Kosuke Atari was one of the men who sang, but he was also an actor in that great successful movie in Taiwan called Cake No. 7. And so I remember doing a gig in Tokyo for the Daime Onakusai, which is like the untitled concert. This untitled concert featured Kosuke Atari and myself. And I would never forget finishing that concert and then hopping on the airplane going to Taiwan. Not to realize that on the TV I saw the movie and I saw him, and then to be coming to Vancouver the following year, only to remember that Kosuke Atari and I worked together. In addition, I believe TAIWANfest had invited that year Van Fan, and so for me it's great not just only looking at the classical side of it, but also the popular side of it. I haven't worked with Cho Lan Ling, to be honest, no. But we are actually colleagues and we are actually communicating by Facebook time to time. I do really hope to work with Cho Lan Ling one day. One thing I really respect about Cho Lan Ling is what a human being he is. He's one of those most generous guys, very kind, and he's always willing to help. I think he has a very deep connection with Taiwan, especially that, he's essentially one of the leading world-class musicians from Taiwan that we can be very proud of. I think one of the great things about the Toronto Orchestra was that this was actually based out of Scarborough. And so the Scarborough Philharmonic, I remembered, I was connected to their contractor named Samuel. And the people he actually hired into the concert, I ended up meeting friends who who are essentially friends for life. Some of them, they study music, but they didn't pursue a career in music. So the perfect example was Stephen Haynes, who became the senior vice president of Rogers, Communication. He is such an incredibly dedicated player. He's also such a person who's been with the festival from day one. And I would never forget his stand partner, who was actually Chi Ping. I think last year was very meaningful for her because her son just graduated from Indiana University, and he came and played as a member in the orchestra as a violist. And so it's nice to see that there are two generations of musicians in the orchestra. At the same time, people in this orchestra, many of them told me that the highlight of the summer is always during the festival. The level of musicianship from these people is absolutely incredible. And I have to say, every single one of them poured their heart into the concert. And I think that's very evident with the reaction from the audiences, especially, last year or every year, there's always been a standing ovation. I think the audiences are a key reciprocal to us because we live off the enthusiasm. To have them at the end being on their feet and clapping and yelling, for a lot of us musicians, that's worth much more than our paycheck. That trip actually sort of reminded me of a story called El Sistema in Venezuela. There was a great young man named Maestro Abu who started a thing just for kids, and then it grew into one of the most successful orchestras in the world today. Why I bring this up is I see a lot of similarities in that sense, in that we're dealing with an indigenous group. But the indigenous group is something that I found to be very special in that, these kids were kids living essentially in the mountains. Right now with technology, they do have certain things, but back then I remember meeting the teachers who said that they would essentially have to cut down a tree to make their own violin. I think these kids are dedicated to learning music, and the teachers are, I think, top of the two outstanding teachers. But to hear these kids, I think they were playing a piece called Overture to Atalia, and I would never forget, my arm feeling with so many of the goosebumps because these kids are essentially playing their souls into this instrument that they made themselves, and the level of music playing by the 7-year-old to 12 to 15-year-old was incredibly high. There was a piece I always loved playing because it's so reflective of Taiwan. And I know everybody think of Ban Hong or adolescent longing, but I think a piece that really reflects Taiwan is called The Yearly Around the Year. And this piece is very reflective of what Taiwanese people are. If I could say anything about Taiwan, it's that the beauty of Taiwan is not the island itself, which is Formosa, but it's really in its people, because the people are in the world probably one among the most hospitable people and the most caring people. So I think one of the great things about the Taiwan Festival is we have myself. I think I had the privilege of having the relation from 2011 or 2010. Back then, the VMO was under a little bit of constraint to give out 6 concerts a year. And so talking to the director, Charlie Wu, who graciously took the orchestra in and presented the orchestra, I actually wouldn't say that this is just a gig for any of the musicians. This is a concert that I look forward to every year. Not just in Vancouver, but our relationship which started in 2012 in Toronto. And so one of the great things about TAIWANfest is that I'm always learning something about my heritage, especially my parents' heritage. So for me to learn about my heritage through music, this could not be just a blessing in disguise, but this is, for me, it's a learning experience. So the relationship that we have with TAIWANfest right now is probably going to our 10th anniversary. Performing in Toronto has been one of the things I really look forward to every year, because not just being at Harbourfront Center, but to be performing outside to a live audience who is so incredibly receptive. We always love getting together in August because it has been such a blessing for all of us to get together and make music once a year. In terms of my favorite Taiwanese food, it's actually something that is made in a very small district in Taiwan. It's called age, and age is actually a tofu fish kind of wrap, and inside is noodles, and then they put kind of like a little bit of a hot sauce on top. My father used to live in Danshui, and Danshui was very famous for this age, and there's always this one shop that we particularly go to. One of the things is that this age is something that I think a lot of people will like because it's a very distinct kind of food. The chef in a kitchen is essentially a chef, but a conductor in French is called chef d'orchestre, the chef of the orchestra. And so I think many chefs out there are actually quite great cooks, but they're also essentially great creators. Cooking is a lot like conducting. We have the same ingredients. We have the same recipe. Recipe is the music, manuscript. But how you put it together and how you present it, everybody's different. Nothing is wrong in music and nothing's right in music. So there's no boundaries. I'm Ken Hsieh. I'm the conductor of many orchestras, and I'm different just like you.